Ciao, everybody. So there's an episode of Ally McBeal. This was a 90s law drama where they discussed what is sexy in their case of the week, where it dealt with a man who was really into feet, and that led to a misunderstanding between this man and the woman he was trying to date. By the way, Ally McBeal is kind of my jam, and for its time, it did actually have a lot of feminist themes in it, although some may disagree. But it leads to this question: what does it mean to sexualize something? The U.S. Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart once said on the Louis Malle film The Lovers, which was the film at the center of the court case Jacobellis versus Ohio in 1964, was regarding free speech's applicability to obscenity. In this case, they were talking about whether or not hardcore pornography applied to this film, to which Justice Potter Stewart said, "I know it when I see it." In 1966, Memoir versus Massachusetts, obscenity was defined as patently offensive, appealing to prurient interest, and of no redeeming social value. In 1973, in Miller versus California, this established the test for obscenity, which is 1. The average person applying local community standards looking at the work in its entirety must find that it appeals to the prurient interest. 2. The work must describe or depict in an obviously offensive way sexual conduct or excretory functions. 3. The work as a whole must lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific values. Now, if you like these sort of topics, do the YouTube thing. Just a quick note, the Miller test is a legal thing, so if you're looking at this channel for legal advice, you're looking in the wrong place. Now, this rabbit hole of sexualization got started for me with this one panel, and the tweet that goes along with it that was basically saying it was gross, or specifically the artist was gross. And like many things on Twitter, it got overly complicated and just had people sticking to their views and not actually trying to, quote unquote, listen to a different point of view. So it got me thinking, what does it mean to sexualize something? The Miller test, even though it is a legit test used by lawyers to determine obscenity, which is acknowledged by the courts that what may be considered obscene in one community may not be considered obscene in another. So if everybody has their own definition of sexualization, it is inevitable that people would bump heads with those of differing opinions, like my comic book example before. So is there a way that we can figure out sexualization in a more non-biased way? Let's look at what the scientific method has produced on this particular subject. The APA, or the American Psychological Association, in 2012 had a task force that looked into the question of sexualization. The APA definition for sexualization is as follows: a person's value comes only from his or her sexual appeal or behavior, to the exclusion of other characteristics. Basically, looks and acts related to sex are the only thing that matters. A person is held to a standard that equates physical attractiveness, which is narrowly defined, with being sexy. Basically, if you match this body type or X body type, you sexy. A person is sexually objectified, that is, made into a thing for others' sexual use rather than seen as a person with the capacity for independent action and decision making. Very similar to the first point, but I guess it's more of a dehumanizing the person thing. Finally, or sexuality is inappropriately imposed upon a person. And I guess this part applies to the comic book panel from earlier, though in this report it is used specifically or explicitly to refer to CP. Now, this isn't a check all the boxes, therefore it is kind of thing, nor is it as simple as we got at least one. So, at least for that last part, I don't think it should be read or interpreted that way. So, this isn't as cut and dry as one would hope. Thank you, science. There's a lot of research that can be done in this area, but this research should be done by actual social scientists like sociologists or psychologists, and not by film, art, or literature experts. Not that they can't contribute to the discussion, but clearly, like with the example of Mulvey, these types tend to run with their biases to an unjustified amount. So let's summarize the issue. All right. There is a continuum or spectrum for sexualization. We know that sexualization can be problematic. We have those below the legal age of adulthood that have experienced sexualization, whether it is through their own self-sexualization or the sexualization by other people. We know that the media portrays sexualization, which is then reflected in the non-adult population. And the non-adult population then becomes sexualized, which leads to the media and other corporations portraying more sexualization, and the circle continues. But this reminds me of another kind of argument. I think we've heard this one before. Oh, wait, it's the violence in media and video games. Exchange the word sexualization with violence, and there we go. Now, what they found out was that violence with media exposure doesn't correlate with violent acts, right? So, should we say that the same thing applies to sexualization and sexual acts? Where does the discussion go from here? Are there any practical applications? I would say that being an informed consumer would go a long way, as the nature of what is considered acceptable sexualization is really up to the individual. So, with rating systems very similar to the video game rating systems, even though that's imperfect, one should know what they are purchasing. So, if one sees a comic book that says on the cover has sexual themes, you don't get to complain about it because they tell you you are then a informed consumer. It can also be stated that the sexualization of people has been fueled by the consumers. The adage of sex sells seems to be true more often than not, and with no real limits in place besides one's own moral compass, in which these industries, like Hollywood, has been shown to be the not golden standard of ethics and morality, shows that these industries are not the sole cause of sexualization. Basically, what I'm trying to say is a company will sell it because people are buying it. Consumers have a role in this too. Furthermore, one person shouldn't be dictating what is considered acceptable to other people. Plain and simple. You yourself may find a portrayal problematic, but you don't get to tell other people that they need to find it problematic too. And you certainly shouldn't be disparaging people that disagree with you. Have a little empathy, right? Try to understand where they're coming from. Use logic, use evidence, and if people ask for a source, give it to them, right? Because obviously you guys are coming to different conclusions. Now, where do you think this conversation should go? Do you have an opinion? Do you have anything to contribute? Does it even apply at all? If you like this sort of thing, do the YouTube thing. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Make sure you're having a good day or good evening. Ciao, everybody.